Hey everybody, this is Dr. Maples. Today we're going to continue our series on publishing undergraduate research by talking about designing a quantitative methods section. You know, a quantitative methods section is like a recipe that allows me as a scientist to recreate your study line by line and get the exact same results that you did. If you do a great job in writing your methods section, I'll have no trouble getting the exact same findings that you had. And this means that you've created exciting new knowledge that helps benefit your field of research. But to get there, we need to understand the basics of writing a methods section. In fact, today we're going to break it into 4 specific parts, make sure that you can write a methods section that's not only going to please your professor and get you a great grade in your class, but also help you publish your research. We got a lot to do today, so let's get started. Now, before we begin, I want to ask a favor from you. Would you be willing to flip over to your social media page and share one of my videos? It would mean the world to me because it's going to help me grow this channel and reach students around the globe so that I can support them in having an easier time in college than I did. It'll only take you a minute, and if you'll leave a comment below, I'll personally thank you. In fact, tell me what video you decided to share. Maybe it'll be this one. So when we think about research methods, we're really going back to the old school days of science, thinking about the scientists from the Age of Enlightenment and beyond. They were all about creating rigorous new knowledge through very specific methods that everyone would follow. In fact, that's really what the methods section is all about. It's giving me, as another researcher, a recipe that if I have your data, I should be able to get the exact same findings that you do. That's why these things have to be very detailed and cover a lot of very specific points so that everybody knows exactly what's going on and everyone can exactly recreate what you did. So we're going to break methods sections down into 4 parts. Before we do that, just a quick note. I'm going to hone in on quantitative research methods. Quantitative means that we're using numeric value. Most likely for your paper, you got some data from the General Social Survey, American Community Survey, or maybe you had to create your own survey and create some data. That's fine. Those are all going to most likely be quantitative analyses. So we're going to hone in on those specifically today because that's far more common than undergraduate students doing qualitative papers. However, if you're doing a qualitative methods section and you need some help, you leave me a comment below and I'll be happy to do a video just for you. So let's go into detailed discussion about these 4 parts of a great quantitative research methods section. First up is the research question and the hypotheses. You've actually probably already crafted these. In fact, we have a previous video in this series that talks about developing a research question and the hypotheses. We also have a video talking about literature reviews, which will give you a chance to understand how other people have written, done research, and talked about your very topic. At this stage, what we want to do in our research methods section, however, is go ahead and again for the record state our research question and our hypotheses. I suggest labeling your hypotheses H1, H2 as needed, and also make sure to include a null hypothesis. We also too want to make it clear to the reader exactly what we're proposing to do. That way everybody's on board and everyone knows what's happening. Likewise, this is a good chance for you to double check yourself so that you know exactly what you're doing. Now, our second part is to talk about our data set. And to do that, we actually need to think about what kind of data set you're working with. There's primary data sets, data that you collected, and there's secondary data sets that someone else collected. I want to talk first about secondary data sets because it's easier and it also gives us a sense of what we're going to also have to do with the primary data. Now with secondary data sets, we can generally tell the reader the name of the data set, the place that we retrieve that data set, the year and any important sampling information about that data set, and then simply move on. For example, let's pretend that we used an American Community Survey data set for the year 2017. We could say specifically that we used the 1-year sample and that we are analyzing counties across the entire United States. It's also good, too, to tell the reader a little bit about the American Community Survey, just in case they don't know it. But you've knocked that out in a matter of a handful of sentences. That's secondary data. That's a data set that a lot of people know. If it's a less common data set, you maybe want to say a little bit more about its history just so everyone understands exactly what you're getting in there. But you're basically saying where you got the data year, any specifics like sampling, and also the unit of analysis, counties, individuals, and so forth. Primary data, yeah, that's harder. Primary data is our data that you collected. You went out and got these. So you're going to have to tell us a whole bunch more about them. Let's pretend that you used a survey to collect this data. Some of the things that I'm going to want to know are when you're surveying people, how many people did you survey? How many people completed your survey? How many people refused your survey or declined to take the survey? Were there any interesting notes about the sampling process that you need to share? Was it a convenient sampling? Was it a stratified sample? Was there something else that you did? We also, too, want to know a little bit about the process, like who were the people that you were sampling? What was your population? Tell us every little thing that you can about this data set. Moreover, if you did a survey, it's a great idea to share your survey either at the end of your thesis or note that it's available from the researcher. We want to make sure we have every little piece of information about your data set that you have created. Now that we've explained our data set, we need to talk about what variables we're going to pull out of that data set and use to test our hypotheses. This is an important step, and honestly, this is a spot where I see a lot of students make mistakes. So spend some extra time on this one. Now, when dealing with variables from a data set, we need to do two things for the reader. We need to conceptualize them, and we need to operationalize them. Conceptualize them is just a fancy schmancy way of saying we're going to define it. We're going to tell the reader exactly what this variable is trying to get at. What's the idea here? What's the concept, if you need a way to remember that easily? Operationalize it means that we're going to explain how we're going to measure it. How exactly will we measure the idea that we just defined? I want to use infant mortality here as a straightforward and simple example to remember this. Now, infant mortality as our example is a variable that deals with infants dying in their first year of life. We can conceptualize and operationalize this as an example, however. If we wanted to conceptualize this, we could say the researcher defines or conceptualizes infant mortality as babies dying in the first year of life. If we wanted to operationalize this, we could say the researcher measures or operationalizes infant mortality as the number of babies dying in their first year of life for every 1,000 live births in an area. In fact, we call that the infant mortality rate. It's a common measure. We're going to go through this process of operationalizing, conceptualizing every single variable. If it's in your hypothesis in any way, we're going to make sure that we mention that here. Now, once we've gone through and explained our variables clearly, we do need to talk about any changes we made to the variable. For example, maybe you recoded something or you made Likert items into a scale. We got to know that. We need to know exactly what you're talking about. In fact, these ideas may have already come up in your defining and explaining how you measure them. But if they didn't, now is the step where you need to make it clear. Our final piece, and this is the easiest one, is really filling in that last piece of the hypothesis puzzle by explaining exactly how you're going to test those hypotheses. Now, generally speaking, these are going to be a couple of straightforward things. The student t-test is a great example of that. If that's what you're going to use as your analytical approach, then you simply have to explain how you're doing that. How does this correlate with your hypothesis? How does this fit into the puzzle? But all you got to do is explain that. It's good at this stage to explain exactly how your variables have to be measured for that particular test to be run. This is giving you a chance to double check yourself to make sure you haven't made any sort of user errors. But it also lets the reader know exactly what you're doing. And again, just reiterates everything that you did in this previous part of your methods section and explaining how stuff is measured. Note, at this stage, you're not doing any analysis. You're basically just telling us how you're going to bake this cake. It's actually in this upcoming section, the results or analysis, depending on your field, that you're actually going to go through the process of running your analyses as you've promised, as you've defined in your method section, and tell us what you find. But for now, you're done. Long distance high five. Method sections aren't scary. See, I walked you through it step by step, and you've got everything that you need to make an awesome method section that's going to make your professor say, this is pretty cool. Great job, A++. Let me know what grade you get on your assignments, and if you need any help, leave some comments below. Stay tuned for our next video when we'll actually run the analysis and talk about how to discuss our results coming up soon. Look forward to chatting with you soon. See you next time.